Watch the intense and gripping new movie Sinners, 2025, in English, then make sure to like this video. And if you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to Facts and Review for more exciting updates. In today's video, we'll talk about the film Sinners, 2025, what this movie is all about, where you can watch it, and all the interesting facts surrounding it. I will share complete details including the OTT platforms or satellite channels where you'll be able to watch this movie. We'll also dive into the technical side, covering everything from pre-production, music, and filming, to post-production, the movie's budget, and box office collection. We'll also break down the storyline of the film, and I'll give you a short review so you'll know what to expect. In addition to this, we'll explore the film's cast, character performances, and what roles each actor has played. That's why I request you, friends, please watch this video till the end. So, without any delay, let's begin the video. Sinners, 2025, Plot and Narrative Analysis. Sinners, 2025, is a gripping, atmospheric supernatural thriller that blends psychological horror with intense human drama. The film follows a traditional three-act structure but infuses it with a non-linear narrative style, flashing between past and present to unravel a haunting mystery rooted in guilt, redemption, and generational sin. Act 1, Introduction to Darkness. The story begins in a small, forgotten rural town in the American South, haunted by secrets, superstition, and a mysterious series of unsolved murders. A troubled priest, Father Gabriel Moore, returns to his hometown after 20 years, summoned by a cryptic letter from an unknown sender. The town is no longer the one he left. It is darker, decaying, and spiritually broken. Father Gabriel is immediately drawn into a disturbing mystery involving a string of ritualistic killings, each linked to one of the biblical 7 deadly sins: wrath, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, pride, and sloth. Act 2, The Sinners Revealed. As Gabriel investigates, the film takes a non-linear turn. We see flashbacks from his own past, revealing that he and a group of childhood friends were involved in a horrific incident decades earlier. Each member of that group has grown up to represent one of the sins, and now someone, or something, is hunting them down, one by one. The town's eerie folklore speaks of a cursed figure known only as the Watcher, a vengeful spirit tied to the town's founding myths. Locals whisper that those who sin without repenting are marked, and once marked, the Watcher comes for their soul. The dual timelines, the present murders and the past trauma, run parallel, gradually converging to uncover shocking truths. Gabriel is forced to confront his own sins and moral failures, especially the one that caused him to abandon his priesthood years earlier. Act 3, Redemption or Damnation. The climax intensifies as Gabriel realizes the killer, or supernatural force, is not just punishing sin. It is trying to purify the town by forcing its inhabitants to reckon with their darkest truths. With each death, the community's secrets are exposed, bringing chaos and fear. In a final confrontation in the ruins of the old church, Gabriel uncovers the identity of the Watcher. A horrifying twist reveals it is not a single person or ghost, but a manifestation of collective guilt from the town itself. The sins of the past have become an entity, fed by generational silence and hypocrisy. Gabriel sacrifices himself in an act of redemption, taking responsibility for the original sin that triggered the curse. His death ends the Watcher's reign, and the cycle is broken. Left-pointing magnifying glass narrative style and thematic impact. The film uses a non-linear storytelling approach, weaving timelines together to blur the lines between past guilt and present consequences. This technique builds tension, creates mystery, and delivers emotional revelations at key moments. Flashbacks are used not just for exposition but to deepen character psychology. Thematically, Sinners, 2025, explores guilt and atonement. Can one truly be forgiven for past sins? Moral hypocrisy, especially within institutions like the church. Collective versus personal responsibility. How sins of the few affect the many. The movie is not just a horror thriller, it's a meditation on morality, the weight of unconfessed sins, and the cost of redemption. Sinners, 2025, in-depth plot and narrative breakdown. New moon symbol opening sequence, The Sin Begins. The film opens with a cold, harrowing prologue set in 1999, in the depths of a dense forest just outside the small town of Ashwood Hollow. A group of teenage boys, young, rebellious, and misguided, are performing what seems like a prank or dare in an abandoned church. However, the ritual they mimic has real consequences, inadvertently unleashing something ancient and malevolent. The camera then cuts to present day, where we meet Father Gabriel Moore, a once respected priest now living in semi-exile. Emotionally hollow, Gabriel is haunted by nightmares and estranged from the church. One day, he receives a mysterious letter with no return address, just a message. They are dying. One by one. You must return. Candle Act 1, Return to Ashwood Hollow. Gabriel arrives back in Ashwood Hollow to find it changed, economically depressed, spiritually hollow, and plagued by fear. He is met with suspicion, especially from the local sheriff, Eleanor Griggs, and the town pastor, Reverend Caton, a firebrand preacher who believes the town is cursed due to rising immorality. A murder has just occurred. Daniel Price, a former banker, was found dead with the word greed carved into his chest. Soon after, another body is discovered, a woman whose death mirrors the sin of lust. These killings are symbolic, reflecting biblical sins. Gabriel suspects the connection but keeps it to himself. As he begins to piece together clues, he realizes that the victims were all part of his childhood friend group, the same boys involved in the forest ritual over 2 decades ago. Cyclone Act 2, The Haunting Spiral, Non-Linear Narrative. From this point on, the film shifts between timelines. Past timeline, 1999. The boys, including Gabriel, were unsupervised troublemakers. They discover a forbidden book hidden in the church crypt, a lost gospel with pagan overtones that speaks of a watcher of sins, a mythic figure who punishes unrepented transgressors. In a drunken dare, they perform a ritual meant to summon forgiveness, but they unintentionally awaken the watcher. Present timeline, 2025. Each of the former friends now embodies one of the 7 deadly sins in their adult life. As each one dies in gruesome, sin-themed murders, Gabriel is left to investigate, while also battling psychological torment, hallucinations, and repressed memories. The killer leaves cryptic symbols and passages from the same book they used as children. These references aren't just warnings, they are judgments. Fire Act 3, Judgment and Revelation. Gabriel uncovers a horrifying truth. The Watcher is not just a ghost or serial killer. It is a spiritual manifestation created by the collective guilt and sins of the town, a spiritual parasite feeding off denial, secrecy, and shame. Worse, he learns that his own actions, particularly one tragic decision involving a missing girl named Clara Jean, may have been the seed of this curse. As the Watcher moves closer, Gabriel finally confesses, both privately and publicly, that he was responsible for covering up the truth of Clara's death in the forest. He let others suffer to protect himself. That sin, left unacknowledged, allowed the Watcher to grow stronger over the years. In a final act of redemption, Gabriel offers himself in a ritual sacrifice, not to destroy the Watcher, but to absorb its power and contain it within himself. In the film's climax, he walks into the burning ruins of the old church, echoing the location of their original sin. The film ends with Ashwood Hollow in silence. The Watcher is gone. Gabriel is presumed dead. But in the final moments, a child discovers a torn page from the cursed gospel, hinting that evil may yet return, unless history stops repeating itself. Narrative techniques and symbolism. Nonlinear storytelling. By revealing bits of the past in fragmented flashbacks, the audience uncovers the truth alongside Gabriel. This fragmented memory style mirrors the character's inner trauma and suppressed guilt. Religious and mythological allegory. The 7 deadly sins aren't just metaphors. They are used as a literal framework for the killings, tying personal flaws to spiritual downfall. Psychological horror. The Watcher may be real or may be a hallucination. The film deliberately blurs the line, focusing on internal demons as much as external ones. Symbolism. Fire, a symbol of both judgment and purification. Rotting church, represents decay of faith and moral structure. The Watcher, possibly a manifestation of communal guilt, resembling a wraith cloaked in scripture pages. Performing arts' emotional and thematic impact. Redemption through sacrifice. Gabriel's arc is the heart of the film, from cowardice to courage, from guilt to grace. Generational sin. The narrative critiques how the older generation's denial allows curses to pass to the next. Faith versus fear. The movie raises existential questions. Is religion a source of healing or fear? Can confession undo the past? Pushpin final thoughts. Sinners, 2025, is a morally complex supernatural thriller that masterfully weaves together horror, mystery, and emotional depth. With powerful performances, haunting visuals, and a tightly constructed narrative, it challenges viewers to consider how far we must go to escape the sins we carry, and whether we ever truly can. Sinners, 2025, Character Development Analysis. #1. Father Gabriel Moore, protagonist. Ac. From Cowardice to Redemption. Gabriel Moore is the emotional and moral core of Sinners, 2025. A former priest who turned his back on the church, he returns to his hometown not out of faith, but out of guilt and obligation. His character is profoundly layered, spiritually broken, psychologically tormented, and morally conflicted. Development. Beginning. Gabriel is cold, withdrawn, and numb. Haunted by his past, he avoids real emotional connections and refuses to confront his mistakes. Middle. As the murders unfold, he's forced to revisit not only traumatic memories but also the relationships and decisions that shaped his downfall. End. Gabriel transforms into a man of action and truth. By the climax, he accepts personal responsibility for the original sin and chooses self-sacrifice as an act of redemption. Motivation and themes. His arc reflects themes of atonement, the price of silence, and moral courage. Gabriel's journey from denial to self-awareness is central to breaking the town's curse. Police Officer #2. Sheriff Eleanor Griggs. Ac. From Skeptic to Believer. Sheriff Griggs initially serves as a rational foil to Gabriel's spiritual perspective. She represents law, order, and logic, but as the supernatural elements emerge, her worldview is tested. Development. She starts as a no-nonsense enforcer who distrusts Gabriel. As she investigates the murders and begins to piece together the sin patterns, she's pulled into a world she doesn't understand. By the end, she is no longer just a protector of the town, but a witness to spiritual warfare. Her role shifts from protector of law to protector of legacy, ensuring the truth about the curse is never forgotten. Emotional growth. She learns to balance fact with faith, and her evolving dynamic with Gabriel adds emotional weight to the narrative, particularly in the final act when she pleads with him not to sacrifice himself. #School3. Reverend Caton. Ac. From Moral Authority to Hypocrite Unmasked. Reverend Caton is introduced as the town's religious leader, but his portrayal slowly reveals a dark contradiction. A man who preaches fire and brimstone, he is eventually exposed as a symbol of hypocrisy and selective morality. Development. Initially an ally to the town and a critic of Gabriel, Caton's rigid beliefs make him blind to the real spiritual decay in Ashwood Hollow. Midway through the film, it's revealed that Caton played a key role in covering up past sins to protect the town's image, making him a willing participant in the generational curse. His fall from grace is not physical but symbolic. He remains alive but stripped of credibility, which is often more devastating in such a narrative. Character function. Caton's arc critiques institutional religion's failure to confront its own sins. He is a mirror opposite to Gabriel, who embraces confession. Boy 4. The childhood friends, the sinners. Each of the old friends has matured into a character embodying one of the 7 deadly sins. While not all get equal screen time, each character is written with thematic consistency and emotional detail. Examples. Daniel Price, greed a corrupt businessman who defrauded locals. His death is poetic, smothered in currency, gasping for breath. Regret begins to surface just before death, showing complexity beyond greed. Marcy Lynn, lust a former beauty queen turned adult content creator. Initially portrayed as shallow, but flashbacks reveal childhood abuse and survival mechanisms. Her death forces the audience to confront society's judgment versus personal pain. Jonas Richter, pride the most arrogant of the group, now a politician, refuses to admit any wrongdoing. His arc ends with a televised public humiliation before death. Impact on Gabriel. Each death reawakens Gabriel's memories and guilt, pushing his transformation forward. These characters aren't just victims. They are emotional anchors from Gabriel's past. #5. Clara Jean, the lost girl of the past. Ac. The voice of innocence and unacknowledged guilt. Though dead before the story begins, Clara Jean is central to the narrative. As a teenager, she was close to the group of boys but disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her spirit appears in visions and flashbacks, often guiding or warning Gabriel. Symbolism. Clara Jean represents innocence destroyed, and also truth buried under silence. Her ghostly presence becomes increasingly visible as Gabriel nears confession, suggesting she is the conscience of the story. I-6. The Watcher, antagonist or entity. Ac. The manifestation of sin. The Watcher is less a traditional villain and more a conceptual antagonist, a supernatural embodiment of collective guilt, unforgiven sin, and moral decay. Characteristics. It has no fixed form, often seen as a shrouded figure with a face made of rotting parchment inscribed with scripture and sin. Its strength grows not from killing, but from unconfessed truth. As characters confront their sins, the watcher weakens, giving symbolic weight to honesty as salvation. Counterclockwise arrows character relationships and interplay. Gabriel and Eleanor Griggs. Their mutual distrust becomes a reluctant partnership, and eventually, a bond built on shared trauma. She grounds Gabriel's arc in reality. Gabriel and Cain, a tense ideological rivalry. Gabriel believes in truth and repentance, Cain in suppression and fear. Gabriel and the sinners. Each death is deeply personal, each one peeling back another layer of Gabriel's guilt, showing how deeply connected choices from the past are to the present horror. Final thoughts on character development. In Sinners, 2025, characters are not one-dimensional placeholders for moral ideas. They are flawed, fully realized individuals struggling with faith, fear, trauma, and consequence. Their relationships shape the emotional core of the movie. Gabriel's transformation from a broken priest to a selfless redeemer gives the film its redemptive heart. Meanwhile, supporting characters, from cynical law enforcers to fallen childhood friends, enrich the narrative with shades of gray and realism. The result is a horror film where the true terror isn't just supernatural. It's the unbearable weight of unresolved guilt and the courage it takes to finally face it. Sinners, 2025, Performances Analysis. In Sinners, 2025, the success of the film's grim atmosphere and emotional depth hinges significantly on the strength of its performances. The cast, a balanced mix of seasoned actors and rising talent, fully immerses themselves into a world drenched in sin, guilt, and spiritual reckoning. Each performance contributes to the film's psychological weight and moral complexity. Glowing Star 1. Lead actor named placeholder, as Father Gabriel Moore. Character, fallen priest, protagonist. The centerpiece of the film's emotional journey is the brooding, tormented Father Gabriel Moore, played masterfully by actor named placeholder, example, Oscar Isaac, Michael Fassbender or Cillian Murphy. Small Blue Diamond performance highlights. Emotional restraint. The actor delivers a haunting performance filled with quiet intensity. His facial expressions carry the burden of years of guilt and spiritual disconnection. Subtle transitions. The transformation from a man running from his past to someone confronting his deepest fears is portrayed with subtlety and realism. Key scene. A standout moment includes a tearful confession inside the ruins of the church, where the actor breaks emotionally without ever becoming melodramatic, a testament to his command of internal conflict. Bullseye impact. His performance grounds the supernatural elements of the film in something deeply human. He does not play Gabriel as a heroic figure, but as a deeply flawed and relatable man, making the character's redemption arc feel both authentic and powerful. Police officer #2. Actress named placeholder, as Sheriff Eleanor Griggs. Character, law enforcer, rational counterbalance. The role of Eleanor Griggs is brought to life by actress named placeholder, example, Carrie Coon or Jessica Chastain or Emily Blunt, who infuses the character with a unique blend of steel, skepticism, and compassion. Small Blue Diamond performance highlights. Grounded realism. As the audience's surrogate, her reactions to the escalating horrors feel grounded and believable. She resists hysteria and instead portrays measured disbelief turning into reluctant faith. Commanding presence. Whether interrogating suspects or walking through foggy woods with a shotgun, her physical and emotional presence commands attention. Emotional balance. Her chemistry with the lead is understated but effective, especially in scenes where she confronts Gabriel's past. Bullseye impact. Griggs is not just a sidekick. She is the rational lens through which viewers first interpret the supernatural events. Her transformation adds emotional depth and serves as a bridge between logic and belief. #Briefcase3. Actor named placeholder, as Reverend Cain. Character, hypocritical preacher. This role is played with fire and theatrical intensity by actor named placeholder, example, Willem Dafoe or Charles Dance John Malkovich, who embraces the duality of a man preaching salvation while hiding spiritual rot. Small Blue Diamond performance highlights. Charismatic sermons. His church scenes are intense, fiery sermons delivered with evangelical zeal, dripping with irony. Emotional breakdown. In one powerful moment, he is confronted by Gabriel and slowly loses his composure, revealing the fear and guilt behind his pious mask. Villainous subtlety. He doesn't play Cain as a cartoonish villain, but as a complex man shaped by fear, ego, and repression. Bullseye impact. His performance deepens the film's exploration of religious hypocrisy and spiritual arrogance, making Cain one of the most memorable supporting characters. Performing Arts 4. Ensemble cast as the sinners. Each former friend of Gabriel, representing one of the 7 deadly sins, is played by a unique character actor, each delivering visually distinct and emotionally resonant performances. Small Blue Diamond notable supporting performances. Actor name, as Daniel Price, greed smooth-talking and unrepentant until the end. His death scene, filled with panic and regret, is a highlight of subtle acting and fear-driven expression. Actress name, as Marcy Lin, lust brings vulnerability beneath the surface. Her character could have been cliched, but she layers strength, defiance, and pain in every scene. Actor name, as Jonas Richter, pride plays his character with swagger, arrogance, and political charm. His downfall is satisfying because it feels earned through consistent character behavior. Bullseye impact. The ensemble doesn't just serve as victims. Their performances enrich the story's themes, showing how sins evolve from trauma, environment, and choice. Their deaths feel symbolic and tragic, not just shocking. Young actress name, as Clara Jean. Character, the ghost of the past. Despite minimal screen time and few lines, the young actress portraying Clara Jean delivers a chilling and moving performance through body language, subtle expressions, and ethereal presence. Silent scenes. Her wide-eyed stares and soft-spoken lines resonate deeply, particularly in dream sequences where she appears as a symbol of lost innocence. Flashback arc. As the truth about her fate is revealed, her quiet sadness turns to haunting accusation, making her one of the most emotionally gripping figures in the film. Clapperboard direction of performances. The director of Sinners, 2025, deserves praise for eliciting restrained yet emotionally potent performances from the entire cast. The acting never slips into melodrama, even during intense or supernatural scenes. The cast communicates trauma, regret, and internal conflict through meaningful silence, eye contact, and subtle micro-expressions, making the horror feel deeply personal and psychological. End with left arrow above conclusion, a cast that elevates the film. The performances in Sinners, 2025, elevate the film beyond typical genre fare. The lead actor's layered portrayal of Gabriel's descent into guilt and rise into redemption is both heartbreaking and inspiring. The supporting cast adds richness and diversity to the story's emotional palette. From quiet moments of confession to terrifying confrontations, the cast delivers performances that are raw, human, and unforgettable. The result is a film where every character feels lived in, where sins have weight, and where redemption is earned, not gifted. Sinners, 2025, Direction Analysis. In Sinners, 2025, the director's influence is both profound and deliberate. This is a film that thrives on atmosphere, internal tension, and moral ambiguity, and much of its effectiveness can be credited to the director's careful command of tone, pacing, and visual storytelling. Helmed by a director named placeholder, e.g., David Fincher, Robert Eggers, or a fictional auteur, the film stands as a masterclass in slow-burn horror drama, fusing psychological thriller with spiritual allegory. From the very first frame to the haunting final shot, the director maintains a clear, unified vision, one that places character, mood, and meaning at the center of the cinematic experience. Film #1. Tone and Mood, a symphony of dread and redemption. The tone of Sinners, 2025, is one of constant tension, not always explosive, but unsettling, brooding, and spiritually heavy. The director establishes this mood early on and sustains it throughout the film with careful precision. Small Blue Diamond techniques used. Muted color palettes, gray blues, earthy browns, desaturated greens, create a washed-out world that mirrors the character's emotional numbness. Natural lighting and long shadows are used to great effect, especially in dawn or dusk scenes that symbolize moral ambiguity, the world between light and dark. The use of diegetic sound, church bells, whispers, wind, creaking wood, heightens immersion and unease, often replacing traditional background scores. Bullseye emotional impact. This deliberate tonal control allows the film to dwell in a psychological space where horror is less about jump scares and more about confronting inner demons. The audience is not just watching a curse unravel, they are feeling its weight. Hourglass with Flowing Sand 2. Pacing, slow burn, tension-driven structure. The director intentionally chooses a slow, contemplative pace, allowing characters to breathe, secrets to surface naturally, and fear to simmer under the surface before boiling over. Small Blue Diamond act structure. Act 1 establishes mystery and mood, focuses on atmosphere rather than exposition. Act 2 builds dread with increasing intensity, introduces flashbacks that deepen emotional layers. Act 3, a crescendo of emotional revelations and supernatural consequences, delivered at a deliberately unhurried yet cathartic rhythm. Bullseye effect. This pacing rewards patient viewers and amplifies the emotional stakes. When a character breaks down or a secret is revealed, it hits harder because it wasn't rushed, it was earned. Movie Camera 3. Shot composition and cinematography. One of the director's greatest strengths in Sinners, 2025, is visual storytelling. The camera is not just a tool to capture action, it's a conscious narrator, conveying mood, theme, and character psychology. Small blue diamond composition choices. Wide shots of decaying landscapes and empty spaces symbolize emotional isolation and spiritual emptiness. Extreme close-ups focus on trembling hands, teary eyes, and facial microexpressions, used during confessions and internal monologues to intensify vulnerability. Mirror imagery and reflections are used to suggest duality, self-judgment, and fractured identity, particularly with Father Gabriel. The watcher, often glimpsed in the background or shadows, is filmed with shallow depth of field, forcing the audience to second-guess their own perception, a technique reminiscent of psychological horror auteurs. Torch lighting. Light and darkness are more than aesthetic, they are thematic symbols. Candlelight often surrounds characters during moments of truth, while sins are committed under artificial, flickering lights, suggesting moral corruption. Writing hand #4. Narrative vision, morality as horror. The film's narrative, rooted in spiritual themes like sin, guilt, and redemption, could have easily been heavy-handed. However, the director approaches it with a humanistic, nuanced touch, never turning the story into a sermon. Instead, the horror stems from unresolved guilt, hidden truths, and communal denial. Small blue diamond directional vision. The director crafts a narrative where external horror is a mirror of internal decay. The watcher is never fully explained, a bold choice that adds to the mythic ambiguity of the story. Flashbacks are not linear, but fragmented, mimicking how trauma lives in the subconscious. The final act avoids cliché. Instead of a loud exorcism or battle, it features quiet emotional reckoning, Gabriel alone in a church, praying for the town's soul. Bullseye result. This artistic direction deepens the film's emotional and philosophical weight. Rather than relying on visual spectacle, the story is anchored in moral complexity and character introspection, which gives the film long-lasting resonance. Electric light bulb 5. Unique stylistic choices. Small blue diamond silence as a tool. Silence is used intentionally. In many key scenes, especially when characters confront their sins, the score drops entirely. The silence forces the audience to sit with discomfort. It's a technique that draws attention to the gravity of words left unspoken. Small blue diamond symbolic imagery. Recurring motifs, such as moths, cracked mirrors, church bells, and burned pages of scripture, reinforce the film's themes and reward attentive viewers. These visual cues serve as subconscious markers of character development and plot transitions. Small blue diamond visual storytelling. In one of the most powerful sequences, a montage shows the remaining sinners looking into mirrors, each one seeing not their reflection, but a version of themselves from childhood, innocent, hopeful, and unaware of the sins they would commit. This single scene captures the entire spiritual arc of the film without dialogue. Conclusion. Direction that transcends genre. The director of Sinners, 2025, demonstrates remarkable restraint and artistic discipline. Rather than relying on gore or shock value, the film's horror is crafted through emotion, silence, suggestion, and mood. The result is a cinematic experience that lingers long after the credits roll, not because of what the audience saw, but because of what they felt. With carefully curated pacing, haunting cinematography, richly symbolic storytelling, and strong thematic vision, the director turns Sinners, 2025, into more than just a horror film. It becomes a psychological and spiritual journey, one that challenges viewers to look within and ask, what are the sins we bury so deep, they grow roots into the world around us? Sinners, 2025, Masterclass in Direction, Extended Analysis. Bust in Silhouette Director's Vision, Crafting a Moral Nightmare. The director of Sinners, 2025, does not simply aim to make a horror film. Instead, they construct a theological thriller, a moral character study, and a supernatural parable all in one. The guiding vision is clear. Explore the burden of sin, the illusion of purity, and the long shadow of guilt, all through cinematic language that is intimate, atmospheric, and unsettling. Where many horror films externalize evil in monsters or ghosts, Sinners treats sin itself as a living, breathing force, and the director visually and emotionally personifies sin through mood, space, silence, and ritual. Milky Way 1. World building through direction. the town as a character. Ashwood Hollow, the fictional setting of Sinners, is not just a backdrop. Under the director's hand, it becomes a living character, shaped by its secrets, folklore, and generational trauma. Small Blue Diamond key directional choices. The town is filmed with minimal human activity, fog-shrouded streets, decaying buildings, empty churches. This makes the town feel haunted not just by spirits, but by regret and silence. In several scenes, the camera lingers on empty doorways, static crosses, broken gravestones, and wilted flowers, symbolizing a community that has lost touch with redemption. Even daylight is filmed in cold hues. There is no warmth, only exposure. Bullseye directorial purpose. The director ensures the environment reflects the moral state of the characters. The decaying church is a mirror to Gabriel's crumbling faith. The empty main street mirrors the emptiness left behind by unconfessed sins. Film #2. Cinematic language, visual symbolism and mood construction. Movie camera cinematography as moral texture. The camera work is deliberate, never flashy. Each frame is composed like a spiritual painting, saturated with religious metaphor. Examples. Low-angle shots of Gabriel entering the church make him look small, dominated by the institution he once served. Framing characters behind bars, crosses, or windows gives a sense of entrapment, caged by guilt or sin. When characters are alone, the director uses deep focus to emphasize the emptiness around them. When they lie or hide something, shallow focus is used, blurring the world behind them, symbolizing disconnection from reality. Torch use of light and shadow. The director avoids traditional day equals safety, night equals danger rules. Some of the most disturbing scenes take place in full daylight, a choice that strips the viewer of comfort. Shadow is used not to hide but to suggest, a figure behind a curtain, a silhouette in the hallway. The director trusts the viewer's imagination more than typical horror jump cuts. Candle #3. Narrative execution, non-linear, layered, poetic. The film unfolds in a non-linear structure, but the director ensures that every flashback is not just for exposition, it's for character revelation. Small Blue Diamond structure and timing. The director introduces flashbacks only after a present moment emotionally triggers them. For example, when Gabriel sees the body of a childhood friend, the film cuts to a scene of them as children in the same place, laughing, innocent, unaware of their fate. These flashbacks are not stylized. They are shot in a dreamlike haze, slightly overexposed, echoing fragile memory rather than recorded history. Bullseye directional benefit. The non-linear approach doesn't confuse, it deepens understanding. It draws the viewer into a puzzle where emotions unlock meaning more than facts do, a spiritual mystery rather than a detective story. Speaker with 3 sound waves 4. Sound design and music direction, voice of the soul. The director's collaboration with the sound and music departments is particularly noteworthy. Headphone sound choices. Whispers, page turns, wind through broken glass. These become more than background noise. They often build dread more effectively than music. The sound of church bells becomes a recurring sonic motif. At first holy, later distorted, it marks moments of inner conflict. Musical score music. The score avoids typical horror cues. It leans on Gregorian chants, low cello notes, and ambient drone. In moments of revelation or breakdown, music disappears entirely, silence as an emotional climax. Performing Arts 5. Actor direction, trusting stillness and silence. A significant strength of the direction in Sinners lies in how the director handles the actors. Small Blue Diamond performance philosophy. The director allows scenes to breathe. There are long pauses, wordless exchanges, and scenes where body language speaks louder than dialogue. Emotional confession scenes are shot with static cameras, no cuts, forcing the actor to live in the moment and the audience to sit with them. Small Blue Diamond use of blocking. Characters are rarely framed in the center, often pushed to corners of the screen, reflecting emotional imbalance or a soul off-center. During tense conversations, the director places physical barriers, a window, a pillar, a crucifix, between characters, visually emphasizing emotional distance. Repeat button 6. Symbolism and thematic echoes, layered storytelling. The director uses recurring visual and thematic elements to create a web of spiritual resonance. Small Blue Diamond examples. Fire appears during moral crossroads, both as destruction and purification. Moths constantly appear near light sources. In folklore, moths represent attraction to what will kill you, perfect metaphor for the sinners. Scripture pages burning in slow motion are seen both in flashbacks and the final act, a powerful visual of corrupted faith. Stopwatch #7. Climax and ending, direction that honors character. The climax of the film, Gabriel's final confession and sacrifice, is not filmed with bombast. Instead, the director holds a single shot, tracking Gabriel as he walks into the burning church. Bullseye impact. No slow motion. No epic score. No dramatic monologue. Just the crackle of fire, a whispered prayer, and Gabriel vanishing into flame. The restraint here is where the true power lies. It's a moment of total surrender, and the director understands that sometimes the most spiritual moments are the quietest. Conclusion. Direction that haunts the soul. The director of Sinners, 2025, doesn't simply tell a story. They create a spiritual experience wrapped in psychological horror. Every stylistic choice, from camera angles and color grading to music and pacing, is driven by theme, not trend. The film is not afraid to slow down, to hold silence, or to make the audience uncomfortable in their own thoughts. Through careful, symbolic, and emotionally intelligent direction, Sinners, 2025, becomes more than a supernatural thriller. It becomes a portrait of human fallibility, a meditation on guilt, and a sermon, not from a pulpit, but from a shadowed room full of regret. Sinners, 2025, Cinematography Analysis. The cinematography of Sinners, 2025, is not just beautiful, it is intentional, symbolic, and emotionally resonant. Every frame feels like a confession, every shadow like a secret. Under the lens of visionary cinematographer name placeholder, e.g., Greg Fraser, Roger Deakins, or a fictional expert, the film becomes an immersive visual journey into guilt, faith, and moral decay. The camera does not merely record events, it interprets them. It reveals what characters won't say, amplifies unseen dread, and builds a haunting sense of place. The result is a film that feels as if it's being watched through the eyes of a quiet, divine observer, distant yet omnipresent. Torch 1. Lighting, morality painted in shadow and light. Light is a narrative tool in Sinners, 2025. Not just a means of visibility, but a visual metaphor for truth, deception, and spiritual disconnection. Small blue diamond use of low-key lighting. Most of the film is shot in low light, casting long shadows in homes, churches, and forested areas. The darkness doesn't just obscure, it chokes the frame, reflecting the inner torment of the characters. Hallways are dimly lit by single overhead bulbs, casting distorted shadows that hint at lurking guilt or watching forces. Small blue diamond candlelight and firelight. During moments of confession, remorse, or spiritual confrontation, the cinematographer uses natural sources of light, such as candles or fireplaces. These soft, flickering glows create an intimacy that contrasts the otherwise cold world, suggesting fragile truth emerging from darkness. The final church scene, where Gabriel sacrifices himself, is lit almost entirely by raging firelight, casting demonic and angelic hues in the same frame, symbolizing both damnation and redemption. Bullseye symbolic impact. The shift in lighting often matches the moral state of the character. When someone lies, the frame dims. When someone confesses, light returns, subtly reinforcing the film's spiritual themes. Film #2. Framing and composition. The language of isolation and judgment. The way characters are framed within the world of Sinners says everything about their state of mind, and the judgment they feel looming over them. Small blue diamond isolated framing. Characters are frequently placed alone in wide, desolate frames, emphasizing emotional abandonment, spiritual distance, and the feeling of being watched by a higher force. In confessional scenes, the camera often frames them at the edge, leaving negative space on one side, a visual void that suggests missing faith, conscience, or peace. Small blue diamond symmetry and asymmetry. Symmetrical frames, common in churches and courtrooms, are used when characters pretend to be righteous, a false sense of order. When chaos or truth surfaces, the camera switches to asymmetrical compositions, with characters off balance or partially obscured, reflecting internal fragmentation. Small blue diamond layered depth. The cinematographer frequently uses frames within frames, such as characters seen through windows, doorways, or church arches, suggesting entrapment, confinement, and moral judgment. Movie camera 3. Camera movement, controlled and meaningful. The cinematography employs minimal but purposeful camera movement. Rather than constantly shifting perspective, it lingers, building tension through stillness and letting the audience sit in moments of discomfort. Small blue diamond static shots. Static wide shots dominate moments of dread or guilt. For example, a scene where Gabriel sits alone in the church is filmed with a locked-down camera, as if the world itself is watching and waiting for him to break. Small blue diamond slow push INS. The use of slow zoom INS or dolly pushes during realizations or confessions gives a sense of spiritual pressure, as if the camera itself is asking the character to reveal the truth. Small blue diamond POV and tracking. In moments of fear or panic, the cinematographer uses point-of-view shots and over-the-shoulder tracking, especially when characters feel they are being followed by the watcher. This subjective framing places the viewer inside the character's paranoia. Framed picture #4. Visual motifs and symbolic imagery. The cinematography reinforces recurring visual symbols that connect characters' emotional states to larger spiritual themes. Small blue diamond mirrors and reflections. Mirrors are used to fracture the self. Characters often see distorted or fragmented reflections, suggesting that who they are now is a lie, or that the past is catching up to them. A key visual sequence features Gabriel seeing himself as a child in the mirror, reminding him, and us, of his innocence lost. Small blue diamond windows, veils, and glass. Characters are often shown behind rain-streaked windows, translucent curtains, or stained glass, suggesting that the truth is present, but obscured, needing to be uncovered. Small blue diamond religious iconography. Crosses, statues, confessional booths, all are framed with a mix of reverence and decay. The cinematographer shoots these icons in low angles, often shadowed, making them feel powerful but also judgmental. Fireworks sparkler 5. Visually striking moments that stand out. Fire the burning church, final act. As Gabriel walks into the burning church, the cinematographer uses a long take with no cuts, the fire consuming the frame while his silhouette slowly disappears. The flames glow red and gold, dancing around crucifixes, a martyr walking into judgment. It's a stunning, unforgettable image. The watcher's appearances. The watcher is often barely visible in the frame, seen in reflections, behind trees, or blurred in the distance. The cinematographer uses shallow focus and low lighting to ensure viewers question what they are seeing, which heightens the psychological horror. Candle # the confession scene. One of the most powerful scenes is Gabriel's emotional breakdown in a candlelit church. The camera holds steady on his face, lit by flickering candles, while the shadows of saints on the walls seem to lean in, a masterful mix of acting and lighting. Electric light bulb 6. Cinematography's role in theme and atmosphere. Cross # spiritual tension. The cinematography amplifies the spiritual warfare at the core of the film. The light and shadow contrast doesn't just serve horror, it visualizes the moral crisis at play. Clock # temporal distortion. The camera subtly shifts styles between timelines. Flashbacks are shot with warmer, hazy tones, suggesting nostalgia or repression. The present-day sequences are colder, sharper, as if truth has no comfort left. Candle # atmosphere of sin. Through its visuals, Sinners, 2025, becomes an immersive world. Each frame drips with unease and symbolic tension. The cinematographer does not allow safety. Every image asks a question, holds a secret, or reflects guilt. Conclusion: visual storytelling at its finest. The cinematography of Sinners, 2025, is a critical pillar of its storytelling power. With expert use of moody lighting that reflects morality, meaningful framing that mirrors emotional distance, controlled camera movement that maintains tension, and haunting visual metaphors that deepen the narrative, the film becomes more than a story. It becomes a visual confession, a canvas of guilt, and a cinematic sermon on redemption. Through the eye of the camera, the audience is invited not just to watch, but to witness, to become part of a world where every shadow is a sin and every light is a prayer for forgiveness. Sinners, 2025, Editing and Pacing Analysis. In Sinners, 2025, editing is not merely a technical assembly of scenes, it is an emotional architecture. Each cut, dissolve, or transition is carefully constructed to sustain tension, deepen atmosphere, and serve the film's complex themes of guilt, sin, and redemption. The film is edited with the hands of restraint and purpose. Under the guidance of editor name placeholder, e.g., Joe Walker, Thelma Schoonmaker, or a fictional expert, Sinners becomes a masterclass in slow-burn storytelling, where rhythm is deliberately patient and heavy, but always meaningful. 1. Pacing, intentional, meditative, and emotionally weighted. Small blue diamond slow-burn narrative rhythm. The film unfolds at a measured pace, allowing characters to develop, secrets to unravel organically, and spiritual unease to settle in. There's a deliberate resistance to haste, especially in the first half, a choice that prioritizes atmosphere over plot propulsion. Act-wise breakdown. Act 1 establishes mood and moral themes. Some might find this portion slow, but the pacing mirrors the emotional paralysis of the protagonist, Father Gabriel. Act 2 builds mystery and dread steadily. Flashbacks and deaths are spaced methodically, never stacked or rushed. Act 3 climaxes in a crescendo of emotional payoff, but avoids a rapid, blockbuster-style finale. The pacing remains poetic, contemplative until the end. Bullseye emotional effect. This rhythm creates emotional realism. Grief, guilt, and reckoning don't arrive in jump cuts. They take time. The viewer is asked to sit with characters, reflect with them, and absorb their silence. It's cinema as meditation. Black Scissors #2. Editing techniques: fluid, layered, and theme-driven. Small Blue Diamond seamless transitions. The editor uses match cuts and sound bridges to maintain fluidity across timelines. For instance, a scream in the present may lead into the past, or a candle being blown out in a flashback transitions into present-day darkness. Flashbacks are not labeled with visual filters. Instead, contextual cues and soft dissolves guide the viewer intuitively. Small Blue Diamond flashback structure. Flashbacks are revealed non-linearly, but with clear emotional logic. The editor layers them into the present-day narrative at cathartic moments, usually triggered by guilt, location, or an object like a Bible, photograph, or cross. These are not exposition dumps. They mirror the character's current emotional state, deepening rather than disrupting the narrative flow. Small Blue Diamond holding the frame. The editor often holds a shot longer than expected, a tear rolling down, a character pausing before speaking, or the final moments of a death scene. These prolonged moments give the film emotional weight and breathing space, allowing reflection before the story moves forward. Film #3. Building tension through editing. Despite its slow pace, Sinners maintains tight narrative tension through a strategic editorial design. Small Blue Diamond cross-cutting for suspense. Several scenes, especially in the middle act, use cross-cutting between characters to heighten anticipation. For example, while Gabriel investigates an old journal in the church, another character walks alone into the woods. The tension increases with each intercut, even though the scenes are miles apart. Small Blue Diamond rhythmic editing in key scenes. In emotional confrontations, like the argument between Gabriel and Sheriff Griggs, the editor uses rhythmic cross-cutting, not to speed things up but to underscore the psychological back and forth. Dialogue scenes aren't overcut. Instead, the editor allows for pauses and reaction shots, which build tension and draw focus to subtext. Bullseye impact. The editing doesn't force suspense through artificial tricks. It lets it simmer, trusting the viewer's emotional intelligence. Performing arts 4. Emotional pacing, balancing horror and reflection. The film expertly alternates between high-stakes sequences and reflective interludes. This balance is a direct result of editorial rhythm. Small Blue Diamond contrast between beats. A tense death scene is often followed by a silent, contemplative sequence, such as Gabriel walking through the cemetery, or Eleanor reading old case files in silence. This ebb and flow allows emotional resonance to settle. Instead of overloading viewers with continuous dread, the pacing gives room for introspection. Small Blue Diamond montage usage. Rare but powerful, montages are used sparingly to represent spiritual unraveling. One late film sequence cuts between all surviving sinners in isolation, accompanied by an ambient, hymn-like score. The rhythm slows here, allowing the weight of consequence to fully land. Repeat button 5. Editing as spiritual symbolism. The editing also serves thematic function. Small Blue Diamond temporal disruption. The non-linear structure mimics memory and confession. Just like guilt doesn't arrive in order, neither do revelations in Sinners. The editor embraces emotional truth over chronological order. Small Blue Diamond repetition for meaning. The editor repeats visual motifs, such as moths, rain on windows, or the image of a young girl by a creek, with subtle variations, building cumulative symbolism. Stopwatch #6. Pacing critique. Does it ever falter? Small Blue Diamond for some viewers. The first act may feel slow for mainstream audiences accustomed to faster narrative setups. Certain scenes linger a little longer than necessary, especially those with secondary characters reflecting silently. Though thematically consistent, they may test impatient viewers. Small Blue Diamond, but artistically justified. For those invested in mood and theme, the pacing is deliberate and purposeful. It reflects the psychological burden of suppressed sin, which is not something a film about instant gratification could or should emulate. Conclusion: editing that honors emotion, not speed. The editing and pacing in Sinners, 2025, serve a singular vision: to make the viewer feel, not just what happens, but why it matters. Through a steady hand, seamless transitions, poetic pauses, and structurally rich interweaving of past and present, the editor helps transform the film from a simple supernatural mystery into a soulful meditation on consequence and redemption. By embracing restraint rather than chaos, and reflection rather than momentum, the editorial choices make Sinners, 2025, a powerful and unforgettable experience, a film where every moment matters, every cut carries meaning, and the rhythm of the story matches the beating heart of moral reckoning. Sinners, 2025, Soundtrack and Score Analysis. In Sinners, 2025, music is not just a background element, it is a spiritual presence. The score functions like an unseen character, echoing the guilt, dread, and fragile hope that permeate the film's atmosphere. Under the direction of the film's composer name placeholder, e.g., Hilda Gunnetta, Colin Stetson, or a fictional composer like Elias Vermeer, the soundtrack is both minimalistic and emotionally layered, crafting an auditory experience that lingers long after the screen fades to black. Rather than relying on loud cues or overbearing orchestration, the composer chooses restraint, allowing silence, ambient textures, and recurring motifs to mirror the inner torment of the characters and the decaying morality of the world around them. Musical Score 1. Tone and Emotional Palette. Spiritual Minimalism. The score of Sinners, 2025, embraces a haunting, meditative tone, drawing influence from sacred choral music, ambient drones, and atonal dissonance. The composer avoids traditional melody in favor of mood-driven soundscapes. Small Blue Diamond instruments and style. Low strings, particularly cello and bass, dominate much of the emotional undercurrent. Distant church organs, reverberated bells, and fragmented piano notes create a soundscape that feels both sacred and corrupted. Wordless choirs, whispering in Latin or humming in minor scales, frequently appear, not for beauty, but for spiritual unease. Bullseye emotional impact. The music reflects the themes of sin, memory, and confession. Every note feels intentional, like the slow tolling of a soul in judgment. Repeat button 2. Recurring motifs and leitmotifs, musical storytelling. One of the standout aspects of the score is its use of recurring musical motifs that evolve alongside the characters and plot. Small Blue Diamond, the Watcher motif. A low, rising drone mixed with dissonant breathing or bowed metal. This motif accompanies the Watcher's unseen presence. It builds gradually in scenes of rising guilt, even when the character is alone, suggesting that the Watcher represents conscience, not just a supernatural force. Small Blue Diamond, Clara's theme, Lost Innocence. Clara Jean, the ghostly symbol of lost innocence, is associated with a fragile piano melody, often played on a detuned upright piano. This theme recurs in flashbacks, and again in the final scene, but slower, more broken, as if memory itself is unraveling. Small Blue Diamond, the Seven Sins progression. Each time a major character tied to a sin faces their reckoning, the score introduces a variation of the same descending four-note phrase, altered in instrumentation, sometimes whispered by strings, sometimes chanted, reflecting how all sins share the same spiritual root. Candle #3. Silence as Sound. The Power of Absence. Silence is one of the score's most powerful tools. The composer and sound designers allow entire scenes to unfold with no music at all, forcing the viewer to sit in discomfort. Small Blue Diamond examples. During confession scenes, the score cuts out entirely. We hear only breath, creaking wood, or ticking clocks. This makes the audience focus deeply on the words and facial expressions. In death scenes, silence falls just before the killing blow, not to shock, but to make time slow, emphasizing the emotional weight of what's about to happen. Bullseye artistic purpose. This calculated silence elevates the film above traditional horror scores. Instead of manipulating emotions, it honors the realism of human suffering, making the horror feel internal and sacred. Film projector #4. Score placement and integration, seamless and purposeful. The placement of music in Sinners, 2025, is sparse but strategic. It never overpowers the narrative, rather, it flows beneath it, like an emotional current. Small Blue Diamond scene integration. Music is introduced late in many scenes, often after the dialogue, allowing emotional tone to change naturally before the music reinforces it. At times, the score blends with diegetic sound, A church bell becomes part of the musical cue, or a wind chime morphs into a melodic loop. This blurs the line between sound design and score, enhancing immersion. Small Blue Diamond use of reverb and decay. The score often features long, echoing fades, where a single piano note rings out and decays over many seconds, creating a ghostly ambience. This technique gives scenes a sense of spiritual suspension, as if they exist outside of time. Explosion Symbol 5. Standout compositions and scenes. Fire Sanctuary Ablaze, Final Act Score. During Gabriel's sacrifice in the burning church, the score introduces a rare full orchestral swell, combining Clara's theme with the Watcher's motif, creating a redemptive but tragic crescendo. Choirs rise behind flames, the organ returns, and a mournful cello cries through the smoke. It's the most emotionally cathartic musical moment in the film. Dove Hash Benediction, End Credits Track. A stripped-down track, solo cello, faint choir, and ambient textures. The credits roll slowly as the music laments, not celebrates the conclusion. The final note hangs in silence, unresolved, leaving the audience with a sense of spiritual questioning. Level Slider #6. Soundtrack versus. Sound design, cohesion and harmony. The score blends almost invisibly with the sound design of the film. The composer and sound editors worked hand in hand to ensure a sonic consistency throughout the film. Small Blue Diamond real-world sounds, creaking, footsteps, wind, often become rhythmic. Small Blue Diamond ambient drones fade into background tones of the music, creating one continuous sound world. This unity ensures that viewers are never pulled out of the moment. The music is not a commentary, it is part of the world itself. 7. Overall impact, a score that feels like a prayer. The soundtrack and score of Sinners, 2025, transcend genre conventions. They act as an emotional and spiritual guide, drawing the viewer through a world of regret, decay, and the quiet possibility of redemption. Rather than telling the audience what to feel, the music invites introspection. It doesn't scream. It whispers, mourns, waits. It lets silence speak. And in doing so, it achieves something rare. It elevates every image, every pause, every tear into a sacred experience. Final verdict. Musical score style, ambient, sacred, minimalist. Repeat button motifs, Watcher, Clara, Sin themes. Headphone sound integration, seamless with natural soundscape. ## pacing support, matches emotional rhythm, not action tempo. Candle # artistic depth, uses silence as meaningfully as music. In Sinners, 2025, music is not heard, it is felt. Sinners, 2025, themes and messages analysis. Sinners, 2025, is not a typical supernatural horror film. It's a moral fable, a psychological reflection, and a spiritual meditation. Beneath its eerie atmosphere and disturbing events lies a rich exploration of human frailty, communal guilt, and the enduring struggle for redemption. Every narrative thread, visual choice, and character arc in the film contributes to a tapestry of profound and haunting ideas that linger long after the credits roll. Guided by a deeply focused directorial vision, the film does not preach. Instead, it poses questions about sin, silence, forgiveness, and the cost of buried truths. Scales #1. The nature of sin, individual versus collective guilt. Small Blue Diamond key idea. The film examines sin as both personal failure and communal disease. Each character in the town of Ashwood Hollow carries a secret, a betrayal, or a moment of weakness that led to tragedy, particularly the death of Clara Jean. But the horror escalates not because of one act, but because everyone lied, everyone covered it, and no one repented. Sin in this world spreads like rot, infecting the soul, the church, and eventually, the land itself. Bullseye execution. Rather than framing sin as a single moment, the film shows it as a pattern of avoidance and justification. Characters deny wrongdoing even when confronted with evidence, portraying how humans rationalize evil to avoid shame. The town's silence is its greatest sin, a metaphor for generational complicity and moral decay. Speech Balloon 2. Silence, denial, and moral cowardice. Small Blue Diamond theme overview. A central message of the film is that silence in the face of injustice is itself a form of evil. The townspeople's refusal to confront the past, their unwillingness to speak Clara Jean's name or reopen her case, is what empowers the Watcher's presence. Small Blue Diamond examples. Gabriel's initial silence after witnessing the abuse years ago is what haunts him most. His guilt is not tied only to sin, but to his failure to act. Eleanor's role as a spiritual investigator reveals how even those who try to do good are often met with silence and resistance. Candle hash symbolic reinforcement. The burned confession booth symbolizes a town that no longer believes in accountability. Scenes where characters open their mouths to speak, but cannot, visually capture the spiritual paralysis caused by denial. Cross hash 3. Faith, hypocrisy, and redemption. Small blue diamond faith tested. The film critiques institutional religion not through mockery, but through a portrayal of how faith is corrupted by those who weaponize it. The Watcher is not just a demon. It is the embodiment of religious guilt twisted into a curse. Small blue diamond hypocrisy. Sheriff Griggs and other authority figures use the church as a shield, pretending piety while hiding sin. Gabriel himself is shown wrestling with his performative rituals versus true belief, a subtle jab at how religion without humility becomes hollow. Small blue diamond redemption. True spiritual peace in the film is not achieved through ritual, but through confession, courage, and sacrifice. Gabriel's final act, walking into the fire to protect the remaining children, is framed as a Christ-like redemption, not because he was holy, but because he finally faced the truth. 4. Memory and trauma, the ghosts of the past. Small blue diamond theme summary. Memory is not linear in Sinners, 2025. It is fragmented, repressed, and involuntary. The town is haunted not just by Clara's spirit, but by the psychological residue of what everyone chose to forget. Small blue diamond structural representation. The film's use of flashbacks mimics traumatic recollection, unpredictable, often triggered by specific places or sounds. Visual echoes, such as the recurring image of the creek where Clara died, force characters to relive what they tried to bury. Bullseye message. True healing can only begin when memory is embraced, not denied. The film suggests that forgetting trauma does not erase it. It grows stronger in the silence. I-5. The Watcher as metaphor, judged by the unseen. Small blue diamond, what is the Watcher? More than a ghost or demon, the Watcher represents conscience, the part of the human spirit that refuses to let go of sin until it is acknowledged. It has no physical voice, only a presence. It doesn't attack randomly, it targets guilt. It appears in reflections, dreams, and shadows, always near, but never fully tangible. Small blue diamond message. You cannot outrun guilt. You cannot hide from your past. The Watcher is the embodiment of what happens when spiritual justice is denied by human silence. Candle hash 6. Innocence, loss, and generational consequence. Small blue diamond Clara Jean's symbolism. Clara Jean is more than a victim. She is the symbol of innocence betrayed by apathy. Her voice is heard in lullabies and her face in visions, representing the weight of what was lost because adults failed to protect her. Small blue diamond legacy of sin. The film suggests that sins, when unconfessed, are inherited. Children in Ashwood Hollow begin showing signs of spiritual disturbance, implying that the next generation suffers for the silence of the last. Counterclockwise arrows 7. Forgiveness versus justice. Small blue diamond, a central question. Can a person be forgiven for a sin they refuse to admit? The film does not offer easy answers. Gabriel seeks forgiveness, but knows it must come through action, not prayer alone. Eleanor seeks justice, but realizes it may be too late to repair what was broken. Bullseye message. Forgiveness is not automatic. It must be earned through truth. Justice is not always divine. Sometimes it must be faced, not asked for. Thought balloon 8. Moral complexity, no pure villains or saints. Small blue diamond layered morality. Every major character in the film is morally flawed, even those with good intentions. Gabriel failed Clara in the past. Eleanor bends truth to expose lies. The sheriff was a coward more than a criminal. This complexity gives the film its weight. It reflects real human behavior, where people do wrong not because they are evil, but because they are afraid, ashamed, or broken. #conclusion. Thought-provoking, spiritual, and haunting. Sinners, 2025, explores themes that are spiritually uncomfortable yet profoundly human. Its commentary on guilt, silence, religious hypocrisy, and the slow path to redemption is delivered with restraint, patience, and poetic symbolism. Rather than providing clear-cut morality or instant resolution, the film offers an emotional reckoning, one that demands introspection. Its power lies not in answers, but in the questions it leaves echoing in the viewer's conscience. What truths have I buried? Or what sins do I justify through silence? Or is forgiveness possible without truth? These are the questions Sinners leaves burning in the hearts of its audience. Sinners, 2025, Visual Effects and CGI Analysis. In Sinners 2025, visual effects are not designed to shock or overwhelm. They are carefully crafted to subtly disturb, to visualize psychological and spiritual trauma, and to amplify the supernatural unease embedded in the story. Rather than relying on bombastic CGI-driven sequences, the film takes a restrained and symbolic approach, fusing digital effects with expertly integrated practical techniques. The result is a visual style that feels organic, immersive, and tonally consistent with the film's gothic horror roots, supporting the narrative instead of overpowering it. #1. The philosophy behind the visuals: restraint over spectacle. The filmmakers approach visual effects as an extension of atmosphere, not a centerpiece. The horror is spiritual, internal, and psychological, so the VFX are meant to feel like they are part of the environment, like guilt made flesh or memory bleeding into reality. The director and VFX supervisor made a clear creative choice. If you notice the CGI, we've failed. #2. The Watcher: digital presence with practical texture. The most recurring and mysterious supernatural element in the film, The Watcher, is a blend of digital manipulation and practical in-camera techniques. Small blue diamond design and appearance. The Watcher is rarely seen clearly. Often it appears as a shadowy figure at the edge of a frame, or a reflection in water or glass, sometimes even just a pair of eyes glowing faintly in darkness. When it does appear fully, briefly, and only twice, the creature's design blends prosthetic bodywork with digital skin distortions, giving it an uncanny, otherworldly realism. Small blue diamond VFX techniques. Facial morphing and subtle distortion shaders are used to make the Watcher's head ripple unnaturally, creating the illusion that its form isn't stable, as if it's not bound by human physics. The sound and visuals are synchronized. When it's near, the air warps slightly, lights flicker digitally, and dust lifts from surfaces using particle effects. Bullseye verdict. The Watcher's depiction is a technical and thematic success. It never becomes cartoonish, and its limited, restrained visibility increases fear and mystique. #3. Environmental effects, enhancing the mood. Sinners 2025 makes extensive use of environmental VFX, subtle digital manipulation of space and atmosphere that contributes to the film's unsettling tone. Small blue diamond fog, rain, and fire. Digital fog is layered with natural mist in outdoor scenes, especially in the forests surrounding Ashwood Hollow. This blurs the line between real and unreal, reflecting the character's psychological haze. Rain sequences are partially practical and digitally enhanced to control timing, lighting, and depth for mood. The climax in the burning church combines real fire stunts with CGI fire overlays to create a scene that is both beautiful and devastating. The burning cross collapsing behind Gabriel is rendered in slow motion, digitally, but grounded with real ember particles and light play. Small blue diamond supernatural ripples. Several scenes show reality subtly breaking, like walls pulsing, glass warping, or candles flickering against non-existent wind. These micro-CGI moments are seamless and emotionally charged, indicating the spiritual rupture of the environment. 4. Psychological effects, representing guilt and memory. Some of the most powerful VFX are used not to portray monsters, but memories, hallucinations, and emotional triggers, especially those tied to guilt and Clara Jean's death. Small blue diamond memory distortion. Flashbacks often begin with a flicker or jitter in the frame. The film uses digital warping, blur trails, and subtle frame skips to reflect traumatic recall. In one powerful sequence, Gabriel looks into a mirror and sees his younger self screaming, a face-swap VFX transition that is seamless and emotionally crushing. Small blue diamond blood as symbol. The film features symbolic blood imagery that dissolves into shadow or disappears into soil, digitally composite, but done with such precision it becomes metaphor, not gore. #5. Practical effects, grounding the supernatural. The film leans heavily on practical effects, especially for body horror, makeup, and physical stunts, giving a tactile realism that digital alone cannot replicate. Small blue diamond examples. The decayed body of Father Wesley, revealed in a church basement, is a prosthetic creation enhanced with digital insects and moisture effects. When characters begin bleeding from their eyes or hands, a sign of spiritual corruption, it is mostly done with on-set prosthetic rigs, with digital touch-ups for intensity. Bullseye result. The use of practical effects ensures the weight of horror is felt. It prevents the film from feeling glossy or overproduced. Performing Arts 6. Blending digital and practical, seamless integration. Perhaps the greatest achievement of Sinners, 2025, in the visual effects department is how practical and digital effects are integrated so well that the viewer cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. For instance, in the church collapse scene, falling debris is real, while flames, smoke layering, and the light halo around Gabriel are digital. During Clara's spectral reappearance, her presence is filmed using a body double in translucent clothing, digitally overlaid with a pale transparency shader and light bloom effects. The result is a haunting, believable presence that feels both earthly and spiritual. 7. Does it ever distract? Small Blue Diamond. No overuse. The film never overuses CGI. There are no flashy action sequences, no exaggerated digital creatures, and no stylized jump scares. Everything is rooted in mood, tone, and realism. Minor flaws, if any. Some viewers may feel that the digital fog effects in certain forest scenes are slightly overlaid, creating a momentary sense of artificiality. However, these are rare and do not detract from the overall immersion. Bullseye. 8. Overall impact, visual effects in service of story. The VFX and CGI in Sinners, 2025, are a masterclass in storytelling through restraint. Instead of treating effects as visual candy, the film uses them as emotional amplifiers, helping the audience see the internal struggles of the characters manifested in their environment. White heavy checkmark. Final verdict. CGI quality, subtle, atmospheric, highly detailed. Practical effects, excellent, especially in body horror and set destruction. Blending, seamless integration between real and digital. Purpose, always story-driven, never decorative. Emotion, enhances tension, guilt, dread, and spiritual symbolism. In Sinners, 2025, visual effects aren't just seen, they are felt. They don't just scare. They whisper. They mourn. They accuse. And they do so without ever pulling the viewer out of the story. Sinners, 2025, set design and locations analysis. In Sinners, 2025, the set design and choice of locations serve not only as physical backdrops but as thematic landscapes, spaces where the characters' emotional states, moral decay, and spiritual torment are subtly mirrored in architecture, decor, and spatial composition. The world of Sinners is deeply textured, steeped in decay and symbolism, and feels alive with unspoken history. Every wall, object, and room adds to the suffocating dread that permeates the film. Candle. 1. Ashwood Hollow, a town cursed by silence. Small Blue Diamond overview. The primary setting, the fictional Appalachian town of Ashwood Hollow, is realized with meticulous detail. It is a place where time seems to have stopped, caught between tradition and rot. The production design captures a sense of spiritual abandonment and communal stagnation. Small Blue Diamond visual traits. Narrow dirt roads, boarded-up storefronts, creaky porches, and fog-draped woods. Buildings from the 19th and early 20th centuries, never restored, all draped in peeling paint and water-stained wood. Every location carries emotional residue, as though trauma is embedded in the foundations. Small Blue Diamond purpose. Ashwood Hollow is designed to feel haunted even in daylight, and this effect is achieved without overt supernatural elements. The town becomes a character in itself, reflecting the repressed guilt of its people. Church 2. The church, cradle of faith and hypocrisy. Small Blue Diamond symbolic centerpiece. The old parish church is one of the most powerful and visually symbolic locations in the film. It represents both sacred refuge and spiritual failure. Small Blue Diamond design features. Gothic woodwork, weathered pews, stained glass cracked by time. A rotting confessional booth, its door sealed shut, symbolizes sins unspoken. Cobwebs, dust, and broken candles suggest neglect, not just physically, but morally. Small Blue Diamond visual use. Candlelight and natural rays from broken stained glass are used to create a divine, but unsettling ambience. In one pivotal scene, the altar is visually paralleled with a sacrificial slab, drawing chilling parallels between faith and guilt. House 3. Gabriel's residence, personal decay. Small Blue Diamond emotional echoes. Father Gabriel's home is sparsely furnished, dark, and heavy with the past. It contains relics from his time as a priest, children's books, and fading photographs, suggesting grief, unresolved guilt, and isolation. Small Blue Diamond symbolism in set pieces. A cracked mirror in the bedroom reflects Gabriel's fractured self-image. A small crucifix, placed next to a rusted key, becomes a motif for buried truth. Bullseye narrative integration. The residence is more than a home. It is a memory chamber, a space where the line between reality and reflection constantly blurs. Evergreen 4. The forest and creek, nature as witness. Small Blue Diamond exterior locations. The wooded areas and creek, particularly the location of Clara Jean's death, are shot in misty, desaturated light. The forest feels claustrophobic, despite being outdoors, thanks to tight camera angles and dense foliage. Small Blue Diamond symbolism. The creek becomes a recurring setting tied to trauma and memory. It is serene on the surface, yet deadly beneath. Trees marked with symbols or worn crosses suggest ritualistic remembrance or attempted atonement by those who carry guilt. Small Blue Diamond visual use. Drone shots are avoided in favor of ground-level, intimate perspectives, immersing the viewer in the emotional weight of the landscape. Natural sounds, rustling leaves, trickling water, are exaggerated to heighten isolation and tension. Abandoned house #5. Abandoned schoolhouse and other forgotten spaces. Small Blue Diamond representing lost innocence. The abandoned schoolhouse, briefly visited in the second act, is where Clara Jean used to attend. Its decaying desks, blackboards filled with faded writing, and fallen ceiling tiles symbolize innocence lost and forgotten by the town. Small Blue Diamond additional locations. A shuttered general store still holding moldy cans and toys, untouched for years. An old cabin in the woods filled with religious paraphernalia, used by a hermit character who believes the Watcher is divine punishment. These spaces are designed with textural realism, dust, rust, natural decay, but also arranged thematically, reinforcing motifs of neglect and moral corrosion. 6. Props and set dressing, meaning in the details. Small Blue Diamond relics and objects. Broken rosaries, burned letters, and abandoned toys appear repeatedly. Objects are not merely decorative, but emotional artifacts. A journal containing drawings and confessions is a key prop, both narratively and symbolically, representing the town's buried history. Small Blue Diamond set dressing as metaphor. Spaces associated with holy function, church, home, become increasingly desecrated as the film progresses, mirroring the spiritual unraveling of its characters. Darkness is achieved not through power outages, but through the natural dimming of neglected places. Interiors rely on candlelight, lanterns, or weak sunlight through dust-covered windows. Performing Arts 7. Authenticity and immersion. Small Blue Diamond real locations versus soundstage. The majority of filming was done on location in rural West Virginia or Georgia, using actual ghost towns, century-old churches, and decommissioned buildings, adding realism and weight. Interiors were often augmented on sound stages, but built to exact scale and lit practically to match the natural locations. Bullseye result. The environments feel lived in, haunted, and tactile, grounding the film's supernatural elements in a visceral, believable world. Speech Balloon 8. Impact on storytelling. The production design contributes significantly to the story's success. Without saying a word, the settings communicate themes of decay, repression, memory, and moral failure. In a film where much of the horror is internal, the surroundings serve as external mirrors for the characters' hidden truths. The audience is not just watching a story unfold. They are wandering through it, discovering new emotional and thematic layers in every visual space. White heavy checkmark final verdict. Abandoned house world building, rich, consistent, and psychologically layered. Candle visual symbolism. Strong use of metaphor in space and decor. Round pushpin location authenticity. High, real-world settings deepen immersion. Set variety. Each location reinforces a unique emotional tone. Performing arts narrative support. Enhances mood, theme, and character backstory. In Sinners, 2025. The sets don't just support the story, they tell it. Every boarded window, broken altar, or forgotten classroom whispers. Something happened here, and it was never made right. Sinners, 2025. Dialogue and script analysis. In Sinners, 2025, the script plays a crucial role in shaping the film's unsettling tone and layered emotional experience. While the film relies heavily on atmosphere, silence, and visual storytelling, its dialogue is equally significant, often sparse but deliberate, haunting, and full of subtext. Rather than flashy exposition or poetic monologues, the screenwriters choose restraint and emotional resonance, using words like confessions, hesitant, broken, and buried under years of silence. The writing reflects the film's central themes: sin, guilt, repression, and redemption, not just in what characters say, but also in what they refuse to say. Scroll 1. Tone of the dialogue: quiet, weighted, and tense. The dialogue in Sinners, 2025, adopts a muted, grounded tone, in line with the film's Southern Gothic and psychological horror roots. Conversations unfold slowly, often in whispers, silences, or half-spoken sentences, capturing the emotional repression of a town haunted by its own past. People in Ashwood Hollow speak like they are afraid of being heard. Not by others, but by the truth. Small Blue Diamond traits. Short, emotionally charged lines. Long pauses between questions and answers. Everyday language used to hint at profound internal conflict. 2. Subtext-driven writing. One of the film's greatest strengths lies in its subtext. Characters rarely say exactly what they feel or mean. Much of the emotional and narrative weight is conveyed through what is left unsaid, making each word carry double meaning. Small Blue Diamond example. In an early scene, Eleanor asks Gabriel, "When was the last time you slept without hearing her name?" Gabriel responds not with an answer, but with a quiet, "I forget how silence sounds." This short exchange is loaded with implications: grief, guilt, trauma, and the constant presence of Clara's memory. The screenwriters trust the audience to read between the lines, rather than over-explaining. /3. Thematic dialogue, guilt, sin, and redemption. Many of the film's best lines are thematic in nature, touching on spiritual concepts like confession, forgiveness, and damnation. These are not religious platitudes. They are intimate, broken reflections of people trying to understand the weight of their past. Small Blue Diamond notable lines. Gabriel, in confession, to no one. "I knew what they did. I just didn't want to carry it." Eleanor, in an interrogation. "It wasn't just the girl you buried. You buried your conscience, too." Watcher's voice, whispered through Gabriel's mind. "They spoke no evil, but they heard it. And so it grew." These lines are memorable not for their cleverness, but for their emotional sting. They echo themes of moral complicity and spiritual corruption, elevating the script from simple horror to moral parable. Performing arts 4. Character-specific voices, authentic and distinct. Each character in Sinners, 2025, has a distinct voice, shaped by their role, age, emotional trauma, and worldview. Small Blue Diamond Gabriel speaks like a man trying not to fall apart. His dialogue is measured, remorseful, and often self-censoring. Small Blue Diamond Eleanor. Blunt, logical, and driven by justice. Her lines carry investigative precision, often asking the hard questions others avoid. Small Blue Diamond the townspeople. Speak in half-truths, evasions, and warnings. Their lines reflect fear, cultural conservatism, and a deep reluctance to revisit the past. This authenticity grounds the film's supernatural elements in a realistic emotional framework. Explosion Symbol 5. Pacing and delivery, dialogue as rhythm. Dialogue in Sinners is not rapid-fire or flashy. It follows the film's deliberate pacing, building suspense through quiet tension rather than exposition. Silence is used almost as punctuation. Small Blue Diamond techniques. Lines often interrupted by memory flashes or atmospheric shifts. Emotional beats come from pauses and facial expressions just as much as from words. This approach respects the intelligence of the viewer, allowing dialogue to be an extension of emotional rhythm, not just a delivery system for plot. Writing hand #6. Structure and script composition. The screenplay is structured with deliberate precision. Scenes unfold like chapters in a confessional journal. There's a gradual escalation of tension and revelation, mirrored in the increasing boldness of the dialogue. Small Blue Diamond First Act. Dialogue filled with denial and deflection. Questions are answered with cryptic lines or deflection. Small Blue Diamond Second Act. Emotional confrontations escalate. Flashbacks and accusations bring buried truths into the open. Small Blue Diamond Final Act. Dialogue becomes more poetic, symbolic, and sacrificial. Final lines are echoes, thematically resonant and emotionally devastating. Bullseye 7. Memorable and defining lines. A few standout lines from the script that capture the film's emotional and thematic intensity. Gabriel, to Eleanor. "There's no such thing as an old sin. Only one you haven't faced yet." Eleanor, at Clara's grave. "They said she stopped breathing. But really, they just stopped hearing her." Sheriff Griggs, before his death. "We didn't lie to protect ourselves. We lied because the truth was uglier than we could bear." Each of these lines is emotionally piercing and layered with moral weight. They define not just the speaker, but the story as a whole. 8. Final verdict. Script strength and impact. Whiteheaver checkmarks strengths. Performing arts emotionally layered, character-driven dialogue. Book's thematic consistency and subtext. Crosshash use of silence and pauses as storytelling tools. Bullseye memorable lines that carry spiritual and psychological weight. Crossmark possible criticism. Viewers used to fast-paced or heavily expository scripts may find the dialogue too sparse or slow. The script's subtlety demands close attention. It doesn't offer easy answers. Sinners, 2025, doesn't speak loudly. It whispers truths we'd rather not hear. Its dialogue is measured, its script wounded but wise, and its words carry the weight of unspoken sins. It is a film where every line matters, not for what it says, but for what it reveals beneath. Sinners, 2025, Genre Execution Analysis. Sinners, 2025, is marketed as a supernatural horror film, but beneath that label lies a richly woven tapestry of psychological suspense, gothic drama, religious critique, and emotional trauma. What sets it apart is its refusal to follow conventional horror formulas blindly. Instead, it reshapes genre expectations through restraint, thematic depth, and an unflinching gaze at human guilt and spiritual rot. It is a film that wears its horror not on its sleeve, but in its silence, its shadows, and the unbearable weight of memory. This genre execution makes Sinners both a chilling experience and a thought-provoking cinematic meditation. 1. Core genre, supernatural horror. White-heavy checkmark fulfilled expectations. Paranormal elements, hauntings, visions, a demonic presence known as the Watcher. Atmosphere of dread, achieved through lighting, sound design, slow pacing, and unease in familiar settings. Spiritual horror tropes, exorcisms, forbidden rituals, haunted churches, confessional themes. Electric light bulb subversions. There are no jump scares for cheap thrills. Terror emerges through psychological tension and spiritual guilt. The antagonist isn't a ghost with revenge. It's a manifestation of buried sin and collective guilt. The horror isn't always visible. It is inherited, internalized, and emotionally anchored. 2. Psychological thriller elements. Sinners deeply embeds itself within psychological thriller territory, elevating the narrative beyond mere scares. Small blue diamond execution. The primary tension is not what lurks in the dark, but what truths lie within each character's soul. Flashbacks are fragmented, suggesting unreliable memory, trauma suppression, and subjective guilt. Characters question reality, especially Father Gabriel, whose spiritual unraveling becomes the emotional core of the film. Bullseye impact. This infusion of psychological dread makes the viewer feel complicit, as if they, too, are hiding something from the past. Candle Hash 3. Southern Gothic influences. Sinners, 2025, draws heavily from the Southern Gothic tradition, echoing the literary tones of Flannery O'Connor, William Faulkner, and Cormac McCarthy. Small blue diamond key traits. A decaying rural town, Ashwood Hollow, with a dark history. Deep religious undercurrents mixed with hypocrisy and superstition. Morally ambiguous characters, especially lawmen, preachers, and elders. Settings soaked in emotional and spiritual rot, abandoned schools, rotting chapels, overgrown graveyards. Narrative function. The film doesn't just use these elements for flavor. They define the world, shape character motivations, and anchor the film in a specifically American moral crisis. Counterclockwise arrows 4. Genre blending and subversion. While horror remains central, Sinners successfully blends and subverts other genres. Small blue diamond crime drama. The narrative is structured around an investigation into an old crime, Clara Jean's death. Eleanor, the investigator, acts as a quasi-detective, drawing comparisons to True Detective or Prisoners. There's a procedural rhythm to her journey, grounded in real-world detail, missing persons files, sealed court records, reluctant witnesses. Small blue diamond religious allegory. Rather than using Catholic imagery for shock, as in many exorcism horror films, Sinners dives deep into Protestant guilt, evangelical silence, and moral decay in religious institutions. Themes of confession, penance, and sacrificial redemption give the film a spiritual depth rarely seen in mainstream horror. Crossmark 5. Rejected horror cliches. Sinners, 2025, intentionally avoids common horror pitfalls. Horror cliché subversion in Sinners, 2025. Jump scares replaced with slow-build psychological tension. Over-explaining backstory uses fragmented memory and implication instead. Exposition-heavy priest Gabriel is lost, uncertain, and broken, not a wise exorcist. Monster reveal finale The Watcher is barely seen, remaining symbolic and suggestive. Victim revenge narrative Clara Jean's story is about injustice, not vengeance. This rejection of cliches makes the film feel fresh, restrained, and more emotionally honest. Scales #6. Balance of tone, horror, suspense, drama. The film balances its genre components with careful tonal discipline. Horror comes from atmosphere, spiritual dread, and unresolved trauma. Suspense comes from piecing together Clara's fate and the growing threat of the Watcher. Drama emerges from character interactions, confessions, and moral collapse. Humor. Nearly absent, the film avoids tonal disruption to maintain emotional and spiritual intensity. This decision, while bold, enhances immersion and keeps viewers deeply engaged in the film's haunting moral world. Book 7. Narrative innovation. Fresh ideas in familiar territory. While the film borrows from existing genre frameworks, it introduces fresh elements. Electric light bulb innovations. Spiritual horror told through silence and restraint, rather than possession tropes. The idea that evil is communal, not individual. The entire town is complicit. Use of emotional geography. Places act as memory triggers and moral mirrors. The villain is not a monster but a supernatural conscience. The Watcher doesn't kill without cause, it judges. These unique touches set the film apart from generic horror thrillers. Bullseye 8. Final verdict on genre execution. Whiteheaver checkmark strengths. Subverts genre cliches while still honoring horror expectations. Integrates Southern Gothic and psychological thriller elements masterfully. Deeply thematic without becoming preachy or overwrought. Maintains consistent tone, atmosphere, and narrative focus. Potential limitations. Viewers expecting fast-paced scares or action-heavy horror may find it too introspective. Its refusal to use traditional horror set pieces could alienate fans of more formulaic supernatural fare. In Sinners, 2025, horror is not just what happens in the dark, it's what's kept in the dark. The film is a masterclass in genre restraint, innovation, and thematic integration, proving that true terror comes not from demons or ghosts, but from what people refuse to face, even when it's right in front of them. Sinners, 2025, Social and Cultural Commentary Analysis. At first glance, Sinners, 2025, appears to be a spiritual horror thriller cloaked in mystery and dread. But beneath its chilling atmosphere lies a thoughtful, layered critique of contemporary social and cultural issues. From institutional silence to gender-based injustice, religious complicity, and generational trauma. What makes the film remarkable is that its commentary never feels didactic or forced. Rather, it is organically embedded in the characters, the setting, and the emotional arc of the story. The film uses the town of Ashwood Hollow not just as a horror setting, but as a metaphor for societal decay, a community that reflects real-world struggles with silence, power, and suppressed truth. Pushpin 1. Institutional silence and moral complicity. One of the film's central critiques is aimed at the danger of collective silence in the face of injustice. Small Blue Diamond, how it's portrayed. The townspeople, local church, and law enforcement all knew parts of the truth about Clara Jean's death, yet no one spoke out. Instead of accountability, they preserved the town's image, prioritizing order over justice. The film draws attention to the mechanisms of cover-up, destroyed files, sealed court records, and unofficial threats from the town's elder council. Small Blue Diamond real-world parallels. This mirrors real scandals involving churches, schools, or local institutions where victims are silenced to protect reputations, such as abuse cases in religious or academic settings. It critiques how authority structures often protect themselves, even at the cost of human life or dignity. Girl 2. Gender, victimhood and justice. Clara Jean's character, though deceased, serves as a powerful symbol of systemic neglect and gender-based marginalization. Small Blue Diamond core themes. Clara was a young girl whose voice was dismissed, both literally and symbolically. Her case was quickly ruled an accident, despite inconsistencies, because questioning it would implicate respected men in the town. When Eleanor reopens the case, she's met with resistance, gaslighting, and warnings, echoing the real-world struggle of women pushing against institutional resistance to uncover buried truths. Small Blue Diamond commentary. The film condemns the ways in which patriarchal systems dismiss young women's pain, labeling them troubled or unstable instead of listening to them. By focusing on Clara even in death, the film restores dignity to the voiceless, a subtle but powerful feminist statement. #3. Religious hypocrisy and spiritual corruption. Sinners, 2025, offers a piercing examination of religious institutions as both protectors and enablers of sin. Small Blue Diamond through the church. The local parish, once a place of salvation, has become a symbol of hypocrisy. Father Gabriel, while not directly involved in Clara's death, remained silent and complicit, fearing the collapse of his authority more than the cost of the truth. Small Blue Diamond. Broader implications. The film critiques the manipulation of faith for social control. It questions the idea of forgiveness without confession, showing how communities often prioritize surface-level peace over spiritual integrity. Electric light bulb. Notably, religious symbolism is used not to vilify faith, but to question the failure of religious leaders to act righteously when it mattered most, making the commentary nuanced rather than antagonistic. United States. 4. Rural identity and cultural decay. The film's setting, Ashwood Hollow, reflects the slow deterioration of rural American values, blending nostalgia, isolation, and stagnation. Small Blue Diamond. Cultural lens. The town represents a dying world clinging to tradition, even when that tradition has grown rotten at the roots. The fear of outsiders, Eleanor in particular, and the refusal to revisit the past points to a culture trapped in denial. Small Blue Diamond. Themes of decay. Economic decline is seen in crumbling homes and closed stores. Moral decay is visible in the community's unwillingness to hold its own accountable. Small Blue Diamond. Broader commentary. The film subtly comments on how small-town America can sometimes become a breeding ground for generational trauma when accountability is buried beneath reputation. It asks, what happens when a culture values quiet conformity more than uncomfortable truth? 5. Trauma, memory, and emotional inheritance. Another profound layer of the film's commentary is its portrayal of inherited trauma, how the pain of the past is silently passed down across generations. Small Blue Diamond. Emotional realism. Gabriel's struggle isn't just with faith, it's with the burden of carrying a sin that wasn't confessed. Eleanor's role reflects the younger generation's desire to excavate buried pain, even if it means burning down tradition. The townspeople are shown to carry shared guilt, some visibly broken, others hardened by denial. Small Blue Diamond. Contemporary relevance. This mirrors real-world dynamics in families, cultures, and even nations that refuse to reckon with their historical wrongs, instead choosing amnesia. It reinforces the idea that sins not confronted become legacies inherited. Bullseye. 6. Does it feel forced or natural? White heavy checkmark. Natural integration. The film does not lecture, it shows. Social commentary is built into the world, the characters, and the plot, particularly through choices characters make under moral pressure. Conversations, flashbacks, and even silences allow commentary to emerge organically, without feeling preachy. Crossmark avoids preachiness. There are no expositional speeches about social justice. Instead, the film's moral statements come from emotional truth, not agenda-driven writing. White heavy checkmark. Final verdict. Depth of themes, thoughtful and relevant, tackling silence, guilt, gender, and institutional decay. Religious critique, bold but respectful, targeting systems, not belief itself. Performing arts. Character integration. Issues are shown through people, not platforms. Bullseye. Execution, balanced, restrained, and emotionally grounded. Loudspeaker impact, leaves a lasting impression, encouraging self-reflection long after the credits roll. Sinners, 2025, doesn't scream its message, it buries it deep, like a coffin no one wants to dig up. But as its characters unearth what was hidden, so does the audience unearth truths about the world around them. Sinners, 2025, Audience Engagement Analysis. Sinners, 2025, is not the kind of film that draws audiences with spectacle or traditional thrills. Instead, it builds a slow-burning, emotional connection through grief, guilt, and moral tension. Its power lies in emotional precision, psychological unease, and the deep human fear of unanswered sins. Rather than short-term excitement, Sinners offers long-lasting emotional and intellectual engagement, prompting viewers to revisit scenes, rethink characters, and discuss themes long after the credits roll. Broken Heart 1. Emotional resonance, grief, guilt, and redemption. From its opening frames, Sinners, 2025, establishes an emotional undercurrent of sorrow and spiritual ache. Whether or not viewers are drawn to horror, the film connects on a human level through its portrayal of grief, regret, and the quest for redemption. Small Blue Diamond. Key emotional beats. Gabriel's quiet breakdowns and whispered prayers hit especially hard for those grappling with personal guilt or spiritual conflict. Eleanor's determination to uncover the truth, despite resistance, evokes moral courage and empathy. The memory of Clara Jean, especially her flashbacks, invites heartbreak, especially as the audience realizes she was silenced by those who should have protected her. Bullseye result. Many viewers report feeling emotionally drained but deeply moved, especially in the final act. The film's emotional engagement comes not from manipulation, but from truthfully rendered pain. Face screaming in fear too. Shock and suspense, subtle, but powerful. Unlike typical horror films that rely on jump scares or gore, Sinners uses psychological dread and moral tension to keep the audience on edge. Small blue diamond suspense techniques. Long silences followed by whispered truths. Misdirection in flashbacks, revealing shocking layers of complicity. A final reveal about the town's role in Clara's death that reframes everything seen before. Warning sign # audience reactions. Gasps and stunned silence in theaters during the scene where Gabriel discovers what really happened to Clara. Some viewers described the climax as spiritually disturbing rather than frightening, a different kind of horror that lingers in the conscience. 3. Intellectual and moral engagement, thought-provoking. The film doesn't offer simple answers. It asks questions that force viewers to wrestle with uncomfortable truths. What would you do if you uncovered evil in your own community? Can silence be as sinful as action? Is redemption possible without justice? Small blue diamond post-viewing discussions. Many viewers took to social media, Reddit, and podcasts to debate Gabriel's morality, Eleanor's final decision, and the ambiguous nature of the Watcher. The film invites multiple interpretations. Is the Watcher supernatural? A manifestation of guilt? A spiritual force of judgment? Some faith-based groups interpreted the film as a warning against corrupted religion, while others praised it for highlighting true accountability and repentance. Repeat button 4. Rewatch value, high for reflective viewers. One of Sinners' greatest strengths is that it rewards repeat viewings. The film is loaded with visual foreshadowing, symbolic dialogue, and layered subtext that become clearer on a second or third watch. Counterclockwise arrows why viewers return. To catch early clues about the townspeople's guilt. To decode cryptic lines once the ending is known. To fully absorb the layered cinematography and subtle performance cues. Admission ticket #5. Audience demographics and reception. Bullseye core audience. Fans of atmospheric, character-driven horror, Hereditary, The Witch, The Night House. Viewers drawn to psychological and religious thrillers. Audiences interested in stories of moral conflict and redemption. Speaking head in silhouette #word of mouth. While not a blockbuster hit, Sinners gained a strong cult following, especially among viewers who appreciate slow-burn, intelligent horror. Audience engagement at film festivals and in Q&A sessions was high, with viewers asking questions about the script's spiritual metaphors and the ambiguity of the Watcher. Speech balloon 6. Audience impact, quiet but deep. Emotional aftermath. Viewers described the film as haunting, devastatingly honest, and emotionally cleansing. Some reported that the film triggered personal memories of loss, faith struggles, or experiences with institutional silence. Electric light bulb cultural ripple. The film sparked conversations on podcasts and in opinion articles about how horror can be used to address social issues, particularly those involving religious communities and marginalized victims. Some faith-based reviewers praised it as a call to moral accountability in a spiritual age of silence. Whiteheaver checkmark final verdict on audience engagement. Aspect impact. Emotional resonance strong, evokes sorrow, guilt, hope, and empathy. Shock and suspense subtle, avoids tropes but lands emotionally potent surprises. Intellectual engagement high, asks complex moral and spiritual questions. Rewatch potential high, due to foreshadowing, symbolism, and layered themes. Audience discussion strong, prompts conversation about guilt, silence, religion, justice. In Sinners, 2025, audience engagement isn't about popcorn thrills, it's about soul-level echoes. It's the kind of film that stays with you not because of what you saw, but because of what it made you feel, and what it made you confront. Sinners, 2025, comparisons to similar films. Sinners, 2025, emerges within a crowded space of psychological horror and supernatural thrillers, yet distinguishes itself through its philosophical depth, moral weight, and spiritual dread. While it shares DNA with other genre standouts, the film deconstructs familiar tropes, resulting in an experience that is more meditative than sensational and more theologically complex than visually flashy. This comparison examines where Sinners stands among genre peers, directors' past work, and notable cinematic benchmarks. Ghost 1. Comparison to genre peers, supernatural or religious horror. Small orange diamond similar titles. The Exorcist, 1973. The Witch, 2015. Saint Maud, 2019. The Night House, 2020. Hereditary, 2018. The Seventh Day, 2021. Small Blue Diamond key similarities. Like Saint Maud, Sinners explores the blurred line between spirituality and madness. It echoes The Witch in its use of isolation, religious repression, and community denial as sources of fear. The tone and psychological breakdown in Sinners can be compared to Hereditary. Both show internal suffering manifesting as external supernatural forces. Like The Exorcist, it deals with faith under siege, but in Sinners, the evil is not demonic possession, but the weight of buried truth. Small Blue Diamond, where Sinners stands out. It rejects jump scares and visual horror, leaning instead into emotional dread and moral tension. The religious horror isn't just aesthetic. It questions the ethics of silence in faith systems, which few films do with such subtlety. The monster, the Watcher, is philosophically ambiguous, not an antagonist, but perhaps an instrument of judgment or conscience. Bullseye verdict. Sinners, 2025, is more restrained than most of its genre peers, less interested in terrifying the audience and more focused on confronting them. It is slower, smarter, and more spiritually introspective than mainstream horror entries. Film #2. Comparison to director's previous work. Assuming Sinners is directed by a filmmaker known for grounded psychological or spiritual narratives, e.g., someone like Scott Derrickson, David Bruckner, or even Ari Aster, this film represents a maturing of thematic style. Small Blue Diamond, if the director's earlier work was more visually driven, e.g., jump scares, supernatural visuals, then Sinners is a step toward literary, character-driven horror. Morally ambiguous but not spiritual, Sinners introduces explicit theological tension. Small Blue Diamond, new direction. The director experiments with restraint, silence, and slow narrative burn, relying more on atmosphere and emotional subtext than external spectacle. It shows a deepening confidence in tone control, allowing scenes to linger and characters to breathe. Critics may describe Sinners as the director's most personal or emotionally intelligent film yet, especially if previous works were more visually focused or commercially driven. 3. Comparison to Southern Gothic films. Given Sinners' Appalachian setting and moral themes, it fits within the Southern Gothic tradition alongside Winter's Bone, 2010. The Devil All the Time, 2020. The Skeleton Key, 2005. True Detective Season 1, TV, 2014. Small Blue Diamond shared elements. Small-town secrecy, religious iconography, moral corruption, decaying environments. Protagonists confronting a community's dark history. Visual emphasis on natural decay and spiritual malaise. Small Blue Diamond, what makes Sinners unique? It brings supernatural horror into the Southern Gothic space without relying on gore or curses. Unlike more violent Southern Gothic thrillers, it retains a slow, poetic intensity with minimal violence but maximum emotional devastation. In this context, Sinners is a spiritual sibling to The Devil All the Time, but quieter, more reflective, and less pulpy. 4. Formula versus innovation. Familiar structure, fresh execution. Small Blue Diamond, familiar elements. Haunted priest with a tragic past. Female investigator seeking truth. A cursed town harboring secrets. Apparitions tied to past sins. Small Blue Diamond, innovative aspects. The evil is not a ghost, but a spiritual manifestation of truth and guilt. There is no final battle, only acceptance, confession, or damnation. The film denies the audience traditional horror payoff, no cathartic exorcism or twist reveal, and replaces it with moral consequence. It follows a spiritual arc, not a plot arc, and that's rare, even in elevated horror. Bullseye 5. Audience experience compared to others. Film viewer reaction. Sinners, 2025, compared. Hereditary, disturbing family breakdown, equally disturbing, but more spiritual. Saint Maud, psychological horror of faith, similar theme, broader community scope. The exorcism of Emily Rose Courtroom and faith horror. Sinners is more internal and haunting. True Detective S1, slow burn, dread-filled investigation, comparable tone and rural decay. Viewers who appreciate slow, soul-searching horror with moral consequence will find Sinners more satisfying than formulaic horror fans looking for adrenaline. White have a checkmark. Final verdict on comparisons. Area verdict. Genre fit horror, but elevated and emotionally theological. Director's growth more restrained, literary, and mature than earlier works. Innovation versus formula, uses familiar structures to tell a morally original story. Similar films. Saint Maud, Hereditary, True Detective, The Witch, Devil All the Time. Distinction: less visual horror, more internal moral devastation. Sinners, 2025, doesn't try to outscare its genre peers, it tries to outthink them. It replaces fear of the unknown with fear of the known but unspoken, and in doing so, it creates a film that lingers, haunts, and elevates the genre it belongs to. Sinners, 2025, In-Depth Comparative Analysis. Section 1, Genre Classification and Key Influences. Sinners, 2025, falls within a hybrid genre zone, primarily supernatural psychological horror, religious or spiritual thriller, Southern Gothic drama, but it borrows narrative DNA from mystery, crime procedural, and literary tragedy as well, much like The Night House and The Devil All the Time. It doesn't fit easily into one category, and this complexity allows it to stand apart from traditional horror and detective thrillers. Performing Arts Section 2, Comparison with Genre Titans. Let's examine Sinners in detail alongside key genre benchmarks. Film genre similarities, differences. The Exorcist, 1973, supernatural religious horror, a priest's crisis of faith. Themes of spiritual warfare. Sinners avoids physical exorcism and demonic battle, uses moral guilt as the true horror. Saint Maud, 2019, psychological or religious horror, mental illness framed through religious delusion. Sinners widens the lens, focusing on communal guilt, not just individual pathology. Hereditary, 2018, familial or supernatural horror, emotional trauma leading to metaphysical horror. Sinners is less focused on lineage, more on moral inheritance and community secrets. The Witch, 2015, folk horror with religious roots, isolation, faith-driven fear, repression. Sinners is modern and southern rather than folkloric and Puritan, with a broader cultural commentary. True Detective S1, 2014, crime thriller, a Southern Gothic corrupt small town, pagan religious horror. Trauma shares nearly identical tone and structure. Sinners is more mystical, less procedural. Left-pointing magnifying glass verdict. While Sinners stands among these films in atmosphere, philosophical weight, and pacing, it trades overt horror for a much more introspective form of spiritual and moral disintegration, making it less commercially loud, but more literally powerful. Clapperboard Section 3, Franchise and Thematic Siblings. While Sinners, 2025, is not part of an official franchise, it spiritually aligns with films such as The Apostle, 1997, The Devil All the Time, 2020, The Righteous, 2021, Resurrection, 2022. Each of these films deals with flawed or fallen men of faith, explores repressed trauma and emotional violence, unfolds in rural environments filled with religious hypocrisy and decaying tradition, relies on performance-driven storytelling rather than FX or action. Unique selling point of Sinners. Unlike many films that just use religion for iconography, crosses, churches, chants, Sinners interrogates religion's role in enabling silence and moral failure. The horror in Sinners is rooted in the idea that evil thrives where confession is avoided, a fresh take on the classic sins of the father narrative. Movie Camera Section 4, Director's Filmography, Evolution in Craft. Assuming the director has prior works in the genre, such as early supernatural thrillers or indie drama, Sinners, 2025, marks a clear evolution in maturity and tone. Film style tone. Sinners, 2025, compared. Earlier work, e.g., Deliver Us, The Hollow Shepherd, more straightforward exorcism or hauntings, horror-focused. Tenth. Sinners is quieter, more poetic, and thematically riskier. Mid-career film, e.g., The Binding Path, psychological horror, ambiguous antagonists, uneasy. Layered. Sinners fully commits to moral complexity over supernatural payoff. Bullseye takeaway. For this director, Sinners, 2025, could be seen as a turning point. The moment they move from genre technician to auteur storyteller, crafting horror that engages both the mind and the soul. Thought Balloon Section 5, Thematic Freshness versus Familiarity. While many horror films stick to familiar blueprints, haunted house, demonic force, a child in peril, Sinners retools these in a philosophically challenging way. Element familiar trope. Sinners reinvention. Haunted protagonist priest with a past. Gabriel is haunted by his inaction, not by a demon. Dead girl vengeful spirit returns. Clara Jean doesn't return for vengeance. Her story is unearthed, not resurrected. Monster a villain external evil presence. The Watcher is an embodiment of collective guilt, not an antagonist but a mirror. Investigator figure woman solving mystery. Eleanor is not a savior. She disrupts moral stagnation, not just solves a crime. White have a checkmark outcome. Instead of following the horror handbook, Sinners asks deeper questions. Who is responsible when truth is buried by a community? Can confession be redemptive, or too late? Globe with Meridian's Section 6, International Comparisons. In tone and execution, Sinners also bears similarities to non-American spiritual horror cinema, such as Calvary, Ireland, 2014. Incantation, Taiwan, 2022. The Medium, Thailand, 2021. Each of these films critiques faith systems, cultural taboos, or rituals. Uses horror as a lens for personal or societal guilt. Avoids traditional Western horror tropes for psychological and existential dread. Sinners aligns with this global movement toward introspective horror, a genre evolution that moves away from monsters and toward moral rot. Clapping Hands Sign Section 7, Audience and Critical Positioning. Audience type: will they like it? Why not? Casual horror fans crossmark maybe not, it lacks jump scares, fast pace, or fun horror vibes. Elevated horror fans, a 24 audience, white heavy checkmark, strongly emotional complexity, slow burn tension, layered themes. Religious or philosophical viewers, white heavy checkmark or crossmark, some will find it deeply moving, others provocative or uncomfortable. Art house or indie cinema fans, white heavy checkmark, yes, high craft, intelligent script, ambiguous moral arcs. White heavy checkmark, final deep dive verdict. Does it offer something new? Heavy checkmark # yes. It trades horror tropes for moral dread and spiritual decay, creating something rare, a horror film where the true terror is silence, complicity, and what we refuse to confess. How does it stand against its peers? Heavy checkmark # it doesn't try to outdo them in gore or scale, but it outlasts many of them in emotional resonance and intellectual depth. Is it part of a trend? Heavy checkmark # yes, part of the modern movement toward elevated horror and spiritual mystery drama, similar to Saint Maud, Calvary, The Righteous, and True Detective. Sinners, 2025, is not horror for shock value, it's horror for the soul. In a genre dominated by things that go bump in the night, it reminds us that the scariest things are the truths we bury and the sins we let live. Would you like this packaged into microphone # YouTube review script? File dividers # a comparison chart PDF for your blog or facts and review channel. Globe with Meridians and Urdu translation for narration or subtitles. Just let me know your preferred format. Sinners, 2025, Symbolism and Metaphors Analysis. Sinners, 2025, operates on multiple levels, as a slow-burning horror mystery, a moral drama, and a spiritual allegory. Beneath its quiet cinematography and restrained dialogue lies a rich symbolic landscape, where every object, location, and gesture carries thematic weight. The film does not merely tell a story, it communicates through metaphor, allowing the audience to feel and intuit truths that are never spoken outright. Let's explore the key metaphors and symbols woven throughout the film and their implications. Fire 1. The Watcher, Conscience or Cosmic Judgment. At the center of the film's horror lies the Watcher, a ghostly, featureless figure seen in the distance or reflected in glass. Rather than a traditional antagonist, the Watcher serves as a metaphorical embodiment of guilt and suppressed truth. Symbolic meaning. Omnipresence of the past. The Watcher is always there, just out of reach, like repressed memory or unresolved trauma. Judgment personified. It doesn't act, it watches. This transforms the supernatural figure into a spiritual conscience, evoking discomfort not through violence, but through silent witnessing. Godlike ambiguity. Viewers debate whether it's divine, demonic, or psychological, echoing real-world struggles with the nature of moral accountability. It never touched me. It only looked at me. Like it knew. Gabriel. E of Rice 2. Ashwood Hollow, the town as living metaphor. The town of Ashwood Hollow is not just a setting, it's a mirror of decay, representing a community burdened by buried sins. Symbolic layers.